What is going on, everybody? Enzo here, and welcome back to the channel. So it has been a while since I've uploaded a video here, but without further ado, I am back, and let's go ahead and let's start with today's video. Now, I know this video is going to be different from the types of videos you're used to seeing on this channel, but I thought I'd give it a try because why not? So in today's video, we will be looking at some interesting facts about Final Fantasy X's plot. I won't beat around the bush with this one. Some of you may already know all of these, some of you may know some of you may not know any. But these are facts that I found interesting about the game while reading and playing through it, and I thought I'd share with some of you in the channel today. If you enjoy these kinds of videos, consider leaving a like on this video. If this video reaches 100 likes, then I will make a second part. Also, if you have any interesting facts that you discovered while playing Final Fantasy X, feel free to share them either in the comment section below or through Discord. I have a Discord server that I'd like to grow, so I will have a link to that in the description if you'd like to join, chat, chill, and hang out. This first episode of the 5 interesting facts will focus mostly on story elements, which will include ideas that were scrapped, those that were added to the draft, those that nearly made it to the final cut, and developers' thoughts. Before we get into the facts though, I do want to talk a little bit about the story itself. Now, we can all agree that Final Fantasy X has one of the best told stories in Final Fantasy. The use of his characters, settings, and the revolution of voice acting combined with the amazing soundtrack all led to the amazing story in Spira. However, in order to achieve this feat, a collaborative effort was necessary, so the story of Final Fantasy X was made by the combined efforts of Yoshinori Kitase, Motomu Toriyama, and Daisuke Watanabe. To give a little bit on their portfolios, Kitase worked as a director for Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, and the original Final Fantasy VII, as well as a producer for Final Fantasy X, 13, 15, as well as Final Fantasy VII's Rebirth. Toriyama was the events director for Final Fantasy X, eventually becoming a director for Final Fantasy X-2, 12, and its sequel, the Final Fantasy XIII series, and co-directing Remake and Rebirth for Final Fantasy VII, whilst Watanabe mainly focused on scenario and plot writing for the Final Fantasy series, but he also did so for the Kingdom Hearts series. I figured I'd share a little bit on their portfolio so I'm just not blabbering out random names and give credit to the ones who made this world and this story possible. Without further ado, let us go through a list of interesting facts about Final Fantasy X's plotline. We are going to jump straight into Tidus, and he was supposed to be a plumber whose job was to fix pipes in the underwater ruins. He had a less joyful personality and was even made to look kind of like a hoodlum. Due to Kitase's request, he was made to be more radiant and be a famous athlete. This also affected his hair color, which was supposed to be brown but was changed to blonde. Now, there's a lot to take in here, and one could argue that each of these statements could be their own interesting fact. But I think the idea of Tidus becoming a plumber would have changed the entire complexity of his character in the story of the game, and undoubtedly would have changed some, if not most, of the storyline plots in the game. One notable change being that he would probably have not been involved in Blitzball. This change of him becoming a more radiant character was a good one because he was one of the main reasons Yuna was determined to find a way to finish Sin off for good without the possibility of coming back. If we compare the characters in terms of their color schemes, Tidus and Riku showed the most radiance and almost seemed as symbols of light, whilst everyone else lived under the shadow of Sin in a world where they don't even know where and when Sin will strike next, constantly living under that fear. Although Tidus being a plumber with the ability to repair pipes would have presented different opportunities in the game if that was pushed, one ability he would maintain was that he could swim underwater. In addition, he would be more mechanically inclined, meaning he would have been able to work more closely with the Arbed with their shared ability to work with their technology and tools that would have been seen as forbidden by Yevon. This idea kind of reminds me of the main characters of Dark Chronicles 2, with their ability to repair and build. Granted, that's kind of the premise of the game itself. Still, it would have been cool to explore and see what could have been done with Tidus if this was the case. Interesting idea for an alternate timeline video, perhaps. Going into the second fact, Tidus was supposed to be an unsent, but changed their minds after seeing the Sixth Sense. Here's the interesting thing about this fact. Tidus is definitely not from Spira, at least not a natural citizen of Spira. Instead, he's a formation from the dream created by the faith of the original Zanarkand. I would say this has been a cause of much debate over the years that Final Fantasy X has been around. Who Tidus is, his relation to the faith in Dream Zanarkand, and his clear resemblance to Shuyin. Tidus has been subject to many debates and I am sure will continue to be so. I've created videos even talking about these subjects. I'll leave them in the description if you want to check it out. Honestly, it would have definitely been a lot less of a headache if Tidus had actually been an unsent. Granted, his entire story would have been different as he would have been a citizen of Spira directly. Fun fact number 3, Yuna was supposed to be Tidus' little sister who was a nurse for the Yevon Church, traveling all over Spira to care for people afflicted with a strange disease, only for her to find out later that she had that exact same disease. I suspect this element was an early story proposal for Final Fantasy X, as well, starting with the fact that Tidus and Yuna have developed to be lovers. The idea that they would have been siblings would be, well, strange, at least now that we are 20 years since its release. The element of Yuna traveling around Spira to care for the afflicted citizen was carried to be the element of the pilgrimage, where she would still travel around Spira to obtain aeons to defeat sin. The most interesting part here is, this disease I would guess eventually culminated in the story drafts to what we know now as sin, which is, if we think about it, can be viewed as a disease that causes death all over Spira. It is almost like a sickness of the world itself, and the people are suffering from it from a daily basis. So while this plot element would have been interesting to explore, I am happy overall with the story they ultimately ended up going, and that they had taken some inspiration from their previous ideas and implemented them into the story we now see in this game. Going into fun fact number 4, Monima wanted Yuna to be a pop singing idol in Final Fantasy X as he wanted her to be cheered, especially in Luca. A fragment of this idea was instead made through the 3 singing spirits in Macalania Forest, and Yuna becoming a pop idol was done in X-2. By the sounds of it, the plans for Yuna to be a pop idol were always in place, and she was supposed to portray this version of herself in the events of Final Fantasy X. I think this would have heavily affected her dynamic with the world itself, as she would have been more cheery, which is a trait she still kept in her journey despite all the obstacles that stood in her way. Although that would be interesting, was she still supposed to embark on her pilgrimage as a summoner while performing for her people to keep her happy? I'll definitely say this. It would be another form of entertainment to keep the citizens of Spira from fearing the shadow of sin and keep themselves happy. Similar to the effects of Blitzball. In a way, Tidus is doing both roles of being her guardian while playing Blitzball, so I could have seen a world where her role in Final Fantasy X-2 as a songstress and Final Fantasy X as a summoner could have intertwined. But we can see she already had a lot on her plate during Final Fantasy X. Let me know what you think. Would you have wanted to see her pursue another activity on top of her roles as a summoner? Fun fact number 5, Watanabe's regret of Seymour. He knew Seymour would be eclipsed by Sin and Jet as they were the main antagonists. He regrets and wishes Seymour was better integrated into the story. This one was strange because despite the hate that Seymour gets, justifiably so, I thought he was a well-written and well-integrated character. There have been many enemies throughout video game franchises that were seen as secondary to the main antagonists, but were still formidable in their own right. Off the top of my head, I am thinking the likes of Dulmagus from Dragon Quest VIII. Despite the main enemy being Rapthorn, Dulmagus left more of an impact to the party directly, even though technically he was being manipulated by Rapthorn. Another example would be Saruman from Lord of the Rings, a formidable secondary villain as he was the head of the White Council, but later turned traitor and decided to join Sauron's ranks in the events of the Two Towers. I think what made Seymour a very formidable opponent was the fact that he had attempted to be close with Yuna, so he would treat her well in the first half of the game, to eventually becoming more forceful in his attempts to use her to become Sin in the second half, leading to a couple of difficult encounters with him through the game. If Seymour was made into the main enemy of a DLC based on Final Fantasy X or a spin-off, I think that would be a better way to put a spotlight on its character. Kind of similar to Gontaro Dim from the Hearts of Stone DLC from The Witcher 3, although at the time of Final Fantasy X's release, there was no plans for any DLC to come out with it, but I think that would have been cool regardless. And there it is, 5 interesting facts about the plots of Spira in Final Fantasy X. Honestly, while I was reading through this, I started to imagine ideas in my head on what Final Fantasy X and the events in Spira would have looked like if even one of these ideas came into fruition, and each one presented very different timelines. Perhaps I'll share one of them, or all of them, depending on how many likes this video gets. If we can reach 100 likes, I will look to make more videos such as this. If you have any other interesting facts you'd like to share, leave them in the comment section below. For those of you who want to know where I got these facts from, I got them from The Legend of Final Fantasy X. This book talks about the story of both X and X-2, as well as the creation of the world and the developers' insights about the game. It's a very interesting read. If you've never read the book before, I suggest giving it a read. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you wish to see more Final Fantasy related content. Other than that, this is Enzo signing out, and that, as they say, is that.